Hello, I'm Ed Byrne. Welcome, one and all, to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Ed Byrne, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show. How are you today?
I am surprisingly well. Yeah, I'm feeling good. Yeah.
This is fantastic news.
Yeah, I'm delighted with how good I'm feeling today. Despite I didn't get a great sleep last night, but I'm feeling quite positive. I'm currently writing the next tour, and I definitely feel like I'm ahead of my normal schedule at this point.
This is very good. So you've got the afternoon off to come to the Museum of Comedy and have a chat.
Exactly. Before going out tonight to try out some... I've one new joke that I'm going to go and try out tonight in a comedy club. I won't just get on stage and do a single joke. I will have to justify my time on stage and do 5 minutes or so. Yeah. So bracket that one brand new joke with a collection of relatively new jokes that I'm still polishing.
Just do 55 minutes of crowd work, ask if there's any stag dudes in.
That might be a little bit stage hoggy. It's I think I'm only supposed to do 5 or 10 as it is. Yeah.
They'll be in a frenzy though, can you imagine?
It would be very rude to the other act, so if I did that.
That's very true.
Yeah. I have seen that happen. It doesn't really happen over here, but I've seen it happen in American comedy clubs. I always feel really bad for the guy who has to follow Chris Rock, who's decided to come in and riff for an hour, you know. And then some guy has to go on afterwards, and everyone who's planning on leaving in the next half an hour anyway, because you know a lot of those comedy clubs they just run sort of all night, and people drop in for an hour or two and then leave again. So people who are on their way out anyway, they've stayed for the whole of Chris Rock, and then they all just get up and leave, and the next guy's got to mop up.
It's highly problematic, which is why I didn't tell Chris I'm here today, because I thought a similar thing would happen.
He wouldn't be the first time he's interrupted an interview of mine to do 40 minutes.
Absolute nightmare. So when you were at university, you studied horticulture for a bit, I understand, and then you started a comedy night. Yeah,
I mean, to say I studied horticulture is probably still an overstatement. I'm not bragging about my lack of academic appliance, but I coasted through first year on what I'd done at school, and then I dropped out during second year.
Best way.
Yeah. I did attend some lectures, but the chemistry was really hard. It was a BSc in chemistry, in science, a BSc in horticulture, so probably a proper science degree. And I just couldn't be arsed. I had applied myself quite hard at school to get into university, and then suddenly it's like, I can't do 4 years of everything being this hard. I just don't have the staying power. So I dropped out. It's why I think today I get very annoyed with people who reject science, you know, people who are sort of anti-science. I know how hard science is. You have to be clever to understand it, and you have to really apply yourself. And when people just, you know, go on a retreat for a weekend and suddenly decide that science is nonsense, that's a lot easier to do than to actually get a degree in it, because it's hard. You have to learn a lot of things. My brain just wasn't cut out for it.
But it's okay to not do science, but acknowledge that it exists, which is quite a good thing.
Like I did. I don't have a degree in science, but I respect that people have them, and those people know more than I do.
Exactly, very true. Now, how did your first gigs go, having sort of gone from doing something quite different, I guess? Did you always want to get into comedy? Yeah,
I always had the urge. I never thought I'd be good enough to be an actual stand-up comedian. I hoped that I would go into sort of presenting. I actually probably started out thinking I'd be nice to be a game show host or something like that. I know that seems very shallow. I didn't feel I actually had the necessary skills to be an actual comedian, but I thought I was always kind of funny enough, you know, and I just thought that seemed a way to go. Game show host, not realizing that in order to get a job as a game show host, you kind of first have to either be a comedian or something else. But anyway, I fancied being a presenter, that sort of thing. But I had that working class ethic of you needed a trade to fall back on. Hence why I studied horticulture and not TV production or something like that, which is really now in retrospect what I should have done.
Yeah, it would have been useful.
I should have done something useful to my career. Yeah.
Lovely garden, though, yeah?
Yeah, somebody else does it. But as Jonathan Ross pointed out, I did a panel show with him once, and he said, think about it, Ed, if you'd stuck with gardening instead of going into comedy, you might have your own TV show by now. And that's a very good point.
It's a very good point.
Yeah. So I did, I dropped out, and the early gigs were all right, actually. I was emceeing a club in a bar that I used to drink in, and I really just I would work on jokes that week and try them on stage that night, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. I didn't do a lot of crowd work, which is probably what I should have done. I should have worked on that, but I always felt too nervous when it came to it. And then if it was going well, I could stay on, and if it wasn't, I just go, well, anyway, you didn't come here to see me. Here's your act. And I book, because I worked in the student union in the entertainments department, so I had some contacts in booking entertainment. So I got a lot of phone numbers of comedians, and I paid them well over the odds for what they were doing. Even now, £100 for a 50-seater comedy club in Glasgow is excessive. This was 25 years ago. I was paying that money. I think I was slightly hoodwinked by the first comedian I spoke to, who I then handed over the running of the club to, and then I went back and played the club, and he paid me £60.
It's outrageous.
Yeah, £60 I think was a much fairer fee for what the club was.
In 1994, because I like to go through people's careers kind of chronologically, if you count this as career based. You might know what's coming up. You were
a contestant on a well-known game show.
You were?
Yeah, I was.
Called Blind Date?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Now, but my question is this. There was two-part, actually. The first one is, do they kind of feed you the lines that you say? And also, now that you're a stand-up comedian, if you were to go back on the show, do you think you'd say things that are quite different?
Yeah, absolutely. In the latter, absolutely, I would say things completely different. At the time, they only give you a very short amount of time to think of your answers. And then that's it. You've got to stick with them for the rest of the day, because then they write Graham's script based on those, and they don't want to change it. And they will also push you to not be too quirky, and to sound a bit more blind datey. So yeah, there is a certain amount of there's not a lot of latitude as regards what you say. But having said that, I am entirely responsible for the words that came out of my mouth on that show.
Interesting. Because I think they kind of revived it, but with comedians it'd be an incredible show to watch. Like a late night, can you imagine? It'd be a different thing. It
would be a different thing. I think it would be a very tricky thing to do, because first of all, the person who can't see them would have to not know who any of the comedians are. But yet they have to be good enough that you put them on the telly. So that makes it trickier, especially if the person asking the questions is a comedian as well. We'll have to make it that they're not.
Let's find they're not.
Okay, let's just decide that they're not. We're working through this format as we go, aren't we? Yeah.
Stormy, we're going to pitch it this afternoon.
I think so far it worked. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that, Celebs Go Dating or Celebrity Love Island would have worked, but apparently it did. So why not? Why not a blind date comedian special? You certainly won't have any trouble finding single comedians who are happy to go off with a woman they've just met on a show. That's we're not going to weed out that many through any screening process.
And you can get more by just getting comedians that will car share to the venue, get like 3 or 4 that way, and just whoever turns up. Yes,
saying that, and I'm from Brighton, could be the thing that they all three say, and they'll just all have come in the one car to London that day.
How do you know each other? We're all neighbours.
Yeah, we met on a bill.
Now, you were nominated for a Perrier Award at Edinburgh Fringe. What do you consider to be your actual big break? At what point in your career did you think, I've actually made this?
There hasn't been a single moment. One thing that was very helpful and set me on a path was in 96, just before I did my first one-man show at the Fringe. I did Jonathan Ross's Big Talent Show, which this was, again, 96. This was Jonathan Ross's sort of first bid to go into proper mainstream TV from sort of late night Channel 4-y kind of thing. It didn't entirely work. But it was sort of opportunity knocks. It was the days before talent shows were mean, where you got people on the audition process, where they got rid of, where they humiliated people who didn't have that much talent. So the idea and the way it was pitched to me was they wanted people who were professionals in their field, but just hadn't done TV yet. And I think I had done TV in Australia at this point, and possibly Ireland, but I hadn't in Britain. So yes, I did that, and I did it the week before the Fringe began.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I at first they weren't going to let me mention it. At first they said, and I think they suddenly had a change of heart where they wanted to make everybody look more discovered, more amateurish than they were. So they didn't want me to say that I was off to do a professional engagement, and I said, then I'm not doing the show. So they said, okay then. Because here's the sneaky thing they tried to do. They said, no, what we'll do is we'll then do a thing next week where we look back at where the people from last week are, and we'll mention it then. And I said, oh, because you're not doing a thing this week about where the contestants from last week are. And they went, oh, curse him. So I did. I mentioned it to Jonathan Ross during the camera rehearsal. Great. I said, at this point, can we talk about where I'm off to next? I'm off to Edinburgh. I said, oh, they will definitely mention that. So, and it was live TV, so they couldn't edit it out, and bosh. So that was an ad that was seen by something like 8 million people. I was doing a 50-seater venue, so I arrived in Edinburgh with the show already 100% sold out.
That's amazing.
And that was great, and that just set the ball rolling, and just then because then I did a bigger venue the following year and the following year, and they sold out because it just was a handy sort of buzz, I guess. And I think if you have a good Edinburgh Fringe Festival, then that can set you up for the rest of the year. So I think that's been the Edinburgh Fringe has been a massive part of my career, and that TV show, doing that just before it, I think was quite useful.
Yeah, because quite often
it was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's fine.
Very simple. What was your big break? But yeah.
Because a lot of the time comedians will go to Edinburgh Fringe and kind of that's where they get discovered, whereas you managed to get people excited for your show where they otherwise wouldn't have necessarily known about it till they got there.
I think the audience were, for want of a better word, excited, and then that made it much easier then if industry came along to the show, that they're sitting in a room where it's full, and that's helpful. So that yielded going to New Zealand and going to the Aspen Comedy Festival and stuff like that.
Have you got any tips for new comedians, people just starting out?
Not that it would be of any use to anyone, because frankly the landscape has changed considerably since I was a new comedian. When I was starting out, we didn't really have the free fringe, or even the pay what you want fringe, or the £5 fringe, or the various other fringes that there are now. Didn't exist. So I don't really know a great deal about the sort of industry topography, I suppose. But I guess my main bit of advice is use it, and do enjoy yourself, but don't go crazy. Don't just get drunk every night, and don't think that being drunk on stage makes you big or clever.
Very true.
I did that. And I did it more as when I was a little older. I think that when I was really young, I actually could get away with being a little bit drunk on stage. It didn't really. I had enough nervous energy. But I think I did it a few times in my 30s, where I thought, wouldn't it be funny? Because I remember seeing Dylan Moran do it a couple of times, where people were kind of laughing at just how drunk he was, and he was still getting away with it. And I didn't get away with it. I did a few latent lives that really I shouldn't have done at all. But I would advise against it.
Very good advice. Now, fast forwarding to the year 2000, you had the lead role in ITV's pantomime Aladdin.
Yes, that was when my star was very much in the ascendancy. I did the Royal Variety that year. And I did the pantomime, which I just showed my kids for the first time this year. I just suddenly remembered that it was a thing. I think we watched it on YouTube. I didn't even have it.
It's on there.
DVD, yeah. They thought it was very funny. They didn't know who anybody in it was.
That's a great thing looking back at stuff like that. There's Martin Clunes, S Club 7, Patsy Kensit, Gillian Clary.
Yeah, Paul Martin, Ralph Little. But I think what was Martin Clunes was an education in that. Martin Clunes was an incredible performer, because we'd all been there for a while, and for whatever reason, his workload, or perhaps just his contract, he just parachuted in about 2 days before we recorded. And part of me was like, this guy I think he is, and he just was incredible. And he did a couple of stagger throughs, learnt the lines, changed the lines. Everything he changed to was twice as funny as what he was given originally. Everything he improvised was perfect, and he was just a machine. And to watch him was really quite something.
Yeah. I was watching it last night actually because I think he opened the show, didn't he? And it was really entertaining. Yeah.
He's the bad guy. He comes out and does the prologue. Yeah.
And you did some singing as well.
Yes, I did. Yeah. And I remember Patsy Ken's going, but I can't really sing. I'm like, you had a single in the charts. That's quite an admission to say that you can't sing. I do remember, yeah, because it was supposed to be a 2-part harmony, and eventually they just went, okay, you know what, just the two of you just sing the same thing, because we're not going to get a 2-part harmony out of you absolute crows.
Would you be tempted to do any sort of more musicals now? Is there any role you'd like to have?
I would. Do you know what? I went for a meeting about the producers. I think for the touring or for the later West End run, and they said, yeah, we think you'd be good. I said, I'm not a great singer. They said, well, what we would do, we'll have you come in, we'll have you meet with the musical director. They said, to be honest with you, Lee Evans wasn't a great singer when he came in, but we trained him up, and then he was fantastic, and we could do the same for you, provided the sort of the potential is there. And so I went in and I had a meeting and I did a bit of singing with the musical director, and I never heard anything again. So clearly they felt the potential was not there.
Well, let's hope something happens in the future.
But for a few days there, in my head, I was going to start a career in musical theatre.
Exactly. And you should, if anyone's watching.
No, I think if a musical director can tell that it's not happening, then it's probably not.
You've been on the Conan O'Brien's Late Show 5 times, I believe, in the United States of America. Yes. How did that come about? Is it difficult sort of breaking into the States?
Do you know what was funny? It was the segment producer, Frank Smiley, was on holiday with his girlfriend, I think, because she's Irish. Yeah. And he went to the Kilkenny Comedy Festival, and he saw me and he saw Jim Owen, I think, and maybe Sean Hughes. Well, and he wanted all three of us. They were the ones that he liked. And so the thing is, like, they still, it doesn't pay particularly well, and the visa is costly. So even though he wanted me on, there was other considerations. So then it was when the Aspen Comedy Festival booked me, the two of them split the cost of the visa and the airfare, I think. And so I went and did the two of them. I went to New York for a few days first, did Conan, did great, even if I say so myself. We did the Aspen Comedy Festival, did okay. But that was, I did a few then, yeah, I did sort of hit and run. I did one Conan that wasn't very good. I did one where I went to the Montreal Comedy Festival, and then I just popped down to New York for the night to do it, and then back. And it wasn't. Every other one I've done, myself and Frank Smiley, we went around the comedy clubs in New York, and like at least the night before, to bang the 5 minutes into shape. And the one time we didn't do that, it really showed. I opened with this routine about leg warmers, and the audience was just like, "No, this is not doing it for us." But the thing is, a show like that, even it was watched by like 2 million people in a country that size. So it's not going to do anything for your career. The only thing it's going to do is if you have a bad one and they have to cut you out of the show, it means your career is over in the States. So there's everything to lose and not a lot to gain. And you really have to move to there. If you're starting from scratch, or so, unless you're like Ricky Gervais or something, where you build something here first and then, you know, it gets taken on over there. To just move there, to just try and break into there from over here is not it's just, you just can't do it. You have to move there and commit to it. Because even you go for meetings and stuff, and they say, "So where are you living now?" And I say, "Oh, I'm still back." And straight you can just see them glaze over, like, because in their head, well, you clearly haven't even committed to this. Then, you know.
I guess if you're sort of thinking of touring over there or regularly appearing, it makes more sense to do TV stuff over there, because then it drives an audience somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's also just, as I say, a signifier of your level of commitment to, you know, from a managerial point of view and stuff like that. They want to know if an audition comes in that you can be in a cab and at the audition in an hour. Yeah. You know, so I couldn't do that. I look back now, I think maybe I should have sold my house and moved there for a year and just given it a whirl. It's I'm too old now. No one's looking for the latest 47-year-olds. You know, you see, it's this sort of thing that's exciting, and they were interested in you when you're in your 20s. But
You've just been in your early 20s for ages. That's all it is.
yeah. Again, the internet ruins things like that. You just can't wander in and pretend you've just lived hard and are actually only 30. People find it out too easily.
Very true. Now, in addition to being an amazing comedian, you're also very passionate about canoeing and skiing and like hill walking. Yeah.
Main thing. I wouldn't say I was passionate about skiing, but yeah, hill walking.
You go last week.
I did, but that was the first time I'd been in 2 years. So for something to be passionate about, you've got to go more than it once every 2 years.
I suppose if you ate a certain sandwich once every 2 years, you're not that fond of it.
Yeah, I think that's an implication that you're a fair weather eater of said sandwich. Yeah, I think the kids get into it. So once the kids are into things, that's sign that we're going to be doing it more often. So yeah.
You've been also at the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage in Spain. You've been all over the world kind of walking and doing different travel shows and stuff like that. Have you got any sort of favourite places that you've been or places you'd like to go?
The Central America trip I did with Dara was fantastic, and that was really, really interesting, I think. And I felt like we got under the skin of that country, and even if it didn't all get onto screen, we did some amazing things on that trip, and just by dint of driving all that distance. So that was really, really interesting, and that was one of those I feel quite privileged to have done. And similar with Andy Parsons, we did an episode of that World's Most Dangerous Roads.
Yes.
And a lot of those shows are filmed sometimes over just 3 or 4 days, whereas we did 2 weeks through Siberia. And that was, again, really, really interesting.
Was that actually dangerous? Did you get into any sort of difficulties at any point?
Well, we came off the road a couple of times, you know, and we were warned that we couldn't have a new truck because if we did, it would most likely be stolen by the Russian mafia. We had to just go in a fairly beat up old thing so as not to attract attention. But there wasn't any. There was probably more danger going through El Salvador on the Big Adventure Show. We had to have a military transport on that.
You're said to be a fan of martial arts, and you learnt a bit of Muay Thai boxing.
Oh, I did an article for a newspaper because I used to do martial arts back in the day. So yes, so I did a bit of kickboxing as part of when we were in Thailand. Yeah, because it's a big thing to do in Thailand, and I had done a tiny bit for an article for a newspaper. But I'd done a bit of karate and a bit of jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, so I did think it would be. But we sort of talked up my martial arts enthusiasm in order to justify me getting into the shorts and giving it a whirl.
So you haven't been tempted to do it since?
No, the kids go to karate and I sit and wait for them. That's as close as I get to the dojo now.
But you already know everything you need to, so...
You know what, once you've learned to punch somebody hard in the throat, that's all you need.
Yeah. I think also if you just tell people you know martial arts, it just saves the hassle of having to do it.
Yeah, or just avoid fights at all costs. There's another one. Yeah, I think the greatest willpower must be in knowing you could win a fight and still refusing to take part. I think that willpower is rivaled only by being a skillful guitarist and yet still not taking one out at a party. I think it's a very similar sort of willpower, isn't it?
I've got a similar thing with being a genius at maths but never actually trying or proving it in any way, so I just assume I probably am, so I'm just not going to do any tests or confirm this in any capacity.
Maths is an interesting one to decide you're good at.
I'm really not.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to imagine, though, to even entertain the fact of, because you'd think there's at least been a few times when that's been put to the test, but you're still happy to keep that potential open in your mind. I
did a small quiz last night online and I got the questions right and I was quite pleased with that, so that will do. Happy with that. So you were on Would I Lie to You? Yes. And your story I was very convinced would not be true because you found some steak pie down your trousers.
A steak pie, not just some, an entire, they'd unwrapped it, but an entire steak pie down the back of my trousers. Yeah.
Now, just so I can further understand this, is this an individual small steak pie? It's not like a big family. It's not like a pizza. No.
No, it's still in its tin. No. It was definitely just a regular steak pie. To be honest, it might have been a Scotch pie, which had then morphed into the more steak pie shape. I didn't sample it when I pulled it out of my pants.
Where did you do that? Were you on the underground at the time?
It was on the underground when I noticed it.
So you didn't people didn't see you shoving?
No, if nobody was looking, but I did kind of do this.
Yeah.
And go. And it's weird. As soon as I pulled it out, I knew what it was. I went, that's a piece of steak pie. Perhaps Scotch pie. No, I'm pretty sure steak, actually. I think it was a pastry. And I straight away just knew, just pieced it all, just straight away, I was a student. So I just, somebody must have put that down my trousers while I was asleep. That was just, there was no confusion for even a moment. I realised what had happened.
I remember university, it was a bit like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
But it was the fact that I got to the underground and sat down before even realising it was there. I think it must have been shoved in, and I probably sort of rolled over on it in my sleep and everything, and probably just didn't feel it. Once it moulded to the shape of my buttocks,
like a memory foam cushion.
Yeah. Then it just stayed there.
You're also on Celebrity Chase, and you helped win £117,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, technically that's not what I did. Was at that time I built the most cash to bring back to the table. You know how the format works. We then did not win that money. It was me and Eric Bristow. Lord of mercy on him, but he was not a very useful teammate. And in retrospect, there was a few where I slowed up because I didn't want to, look like a smart arse or a stage hog, which in retrospect that was a bad decision. But there was also one where he buzzed in and then spent quite a while thinking of an answer then that wasn't right.
Yeah.
So he was a nice bloke when I met him.
Yeah.
I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but he cost me that. I have been back on since, but it hasn't been broadcast yet, so I can't tell you anything about it.
Exciting. Well, I wouldn't want to know anyway. I hate spoilers for things like The Chase. Try and avoid them. Like, I won't go on the internet if I know there's a new episode coming out.
Yeah, well, it's of The Chase.
The Chase, yeah.
It's not going to be until Christmas, so.
Exciting.
I'm excited for,
Yeah. No internet now till Christmas. That's it. I'm just going to unplug everything.
Well, no one will have seen it. So no one will see it until Christmas. So it's okay. There will be no hints as to what happened.
One of the questions you got wrong on that particular episode was...
Don't tell me. Was it who wrote Here Comes the Sun? It wasn't that one.
It was the name of the guitarist from the Nude Mountaineering Society.
Oh, yes. It was Hank Wangford.
Yes, very good.
Hank Wangford was the right answer. I was sure they just put that in to make Bradley giggle. I thought that was a Fanny Schmeller one.
Yeah, I was curious if you would, having got the question wrong, then remember the question in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if anybody asked me now what guitarist was the head of the Naked Ramblers, I would absolutely go Hank Wangford. Yeah.
It's bound to come up again.
Yeah. But one I was annoyed at myself was who when they asked who wrote, which one of the Beatles wrote Here Comes the Sun, and I said Paul McCartney. It was George Harrison. So I feel foolish about that.
Never forget it. Oh, yeah.
I got a Monty Python question wrong as well. Yeah. Feel a bit foolish about that too.
Yeah, okay. We'll go. I won't tell anybody. Now you're also on Great British Bake Off, the Comic Relief Edition, baking stuff. My question though is this: if you were to have people around for dinner, anyone, past, present, future, that doesn't exist yet, anyone, who would you like to have, and also what would be your speciality that you would cook for them?
Right. My speciality that I would cook for them, I would either do a sticky pork curry or a beef rendang.
Okay.
One or t'other. So I'm sorry, there is no vegetarian option. And probably either a key lime pie. I do a good key lime pie.
Really?
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah. Or a lemon meringue. That was what I won the technical bake on when I was on Bake Off with my lemon meringue pie.
Now, who would you want to have round to cook that for?
That's a much trickier question. It has to be said. I mean, I gotta have at least one. Do you know who I'd really like to have? Larry Miller. Larry Miller is a comedian.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
yeah. And he wrote the 5 Stages of Drinking routine, which is my all-time favorite comedy routine. I was showing it to my tour manager recently, and because he'd never seen it, and he said, "Yeah, you can see the influence. You can see the, you know." So he's someone. He's still alive.
Yeah.
I'd like him to come over. I think I'd invite George Clooney. I like him. But I'd get to know him well enough that I could then have a go at him for doing ads for Nespresso.
That makes sense. And Batman and Robin.
No, the Batman and Robin thing, I'm fine. I'm fine with. He has the most amazing career. He did turkey after turkey, and even the films that were good didn't do well at the box office. Nope. Until they finally went, "Do you know what? Let's just let him make a film." And he made Ocean's 11, a remake of a Frank Sinatra film that didn't do well. And that was his first proper bona fide hit. And, you know, the goodwill that there is in the industry towards George Clooney. Apparently, if he was in your pilot would get made. Loads of them didn't get picked up. But he's someone who I followed. Because I used to watch, there was a sitcom he was in before ER. That was called Emergency Room, and they showed it on Irish television because Irish television would buy any old shit the Americans made, and it was called Emergency Room, and Elliot Gould was the star of it.
Yes.
And
was in Ocean's 11, wasn't he?
Yeah. And there you go. And he played Ace, the orderly, in it.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, I have followed it. I've followed his career from early, and I've always been a fan. And even if you look at the character of Doug Ross in ER, it's like if you were to make a character for somebody, this is going to turn you into a star. It's the hard-drinking, womanizing pediatrician, but he cares so much about the babies, you know. So he's allowed these flaws, you know. He's, yes, an incredibly charismatic figure. I'm very fond of him, but I'm very interested in just how fond of him the industry is, and also, but I just want to have a go at them about, you know, Nestle are bad people.
They are, yeah. Environmentally, I believe.
In many ways, but their main thing is their very aggressive marketing of milk replacers in hospitals, particularly in the third world, so that they get you onto the bottle. And then you have to buy this once you leave, and then, rather than when this would have worked better. So I'm not sure if it's a practice they still indulge in, but that was one of their major no-nos.
That's not good, is it?
And then I'd also like Tina Fey. I'm just watching 30 Rock again from the beginning.
So good.
My wrinkled ballsack, it's an amazing show. So her. For that alone. Yeah. And then I really needed a fourth to round it out. I suppose I should get somebody serious. I should say something like Ludwig van Beethoven or something. I should say, or Mark Twain. And I don't know. I feel I should say something quite pretentious now, but
Mr. Blobby.
Yeah. The man behind Mr. Blobby. No Ledmans.
Sounds like an amazing evening.
Yeah, you know what? I think my wife should be allowed to come.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I think so.
So I'll make her the fourth.
It's probably a good call. I think so.
She'll just be staring at George Clooney the whole night, though.
The whole night.
Yeah.
It's increasingly awkward. Being shouted at.
Yeah. Yes, I suppose she'd be stepping in to defend him. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Nescafe is a lovely coffee.
You can also talk about 2 kinds of emergency room with him as well, which I think he will appreciate.
Yes, I will sing the theme tune from Emergency Room, the sitcom, and just baffle him.
Sounds like an incredible evening. Now, speaking of which, you were also on Duck Quacks Don't Echo, and I'm quite fond of following up on things to see what happened next. Now, your scientific fact was that if you put a piece of paper or newspaper in the middle of a room, a cat will come over and sit on that paper. Yeah. Now, you noted that your cat didn't do that. After the show, did you try again, and what did the cat do?
I didn't perform the experiment under laboratory conditions or anything, but I have not noticed my cat being attracted to or sitting on newspaper particularly. But my cat's an odd cat. It drinks from the tap. It jumps up under the sink when it wants a drink.
What kind of taps do you have? Do you have the pulley ones? Oh, okay.
Itself.
That would have been impressive.
Yeah, it would. And we have the kind of taps that it should. It's not. It's got a little handle. It ought to be able to do it, but it can't.
That's a disappointment. Now,
there are a lot of disappointments in life, and if that's my worst, then I'd be a happy man.
That's the main one.
Yeah, that my cat can't operate the tap. Yeah. Instead, there's a litany of disappointments that take place. That's way down the list of disappointments.
Now, this very week, you're going to be on Al Murray's Great British Pub Quiz.
Yes.
Episode 9, I believe, with Kerry Godliman.
Okay.
Do you have any specialist subjects if you're in a pub quiz? What should people recruit you for?
I'm generally pretty good at the cinema questions, usually.
Yeah. Stay up to date with them?
Yeah, I'm fairly good. Not as good as I used to be. Around about sort of late 90s into the noughties, that's my era when I was just sat around watching movies. Yeah.
Starring George Clooney.
Mainly. That's why I followed. That's great. The Peacemaker. Yeah. Not a great film. Not a great film. Out of Sight. Great film. Yeah. But, just not a big hit. One Fine Day. Not a great film.
Where do you stand on Solaris? Because there's one scene where he sits there for ages. Nothing happens. He drops his fork. Ben says he acknowledges that he's dropped his fork. Picks up the fork. Puts it back on the table. And then nothing else happens.
The problem, I think, with Solaris and any other films where they try and remake a very sort of art house European film in Hollywood, it just never quite flies. It was the same with Funny Games. Funny Games is almost a shot-for-shot version of the original. Yeah. And there's just something about it that's just off. You just feel like this isn't Hollywood enough for these actors, but it's not art housey enough either. I feel like I should just be watching the original. That's my overall view on that.
Now, take a massive leap from film to television.
Really answered the question, but the specialist subject thing, I suppose, George Clooney.
George Clooney, basically.
I sometimes can surprise people with my scientific knowledge. Sometimes I will pluck something out of my brain that I remember from, chemistry at school.
It's always good when that happens.
Yeah, it's when you know just one fact that most people don't. It really takes people aback,
Just had a really obscure thing sitting in your brain for 30 years for absolutely no reason until that day.
Yeah, I'm not bad on anatomy. Funnily enough, I know my epiglottis from my epididymis.
That's always useful.
Yeah, it's very important.
Massively ideal. Dara mentioned on, I think it was Thronecast or something like that you watched Game of Thrones together.
No, I had already watched it, and then he binge watched it while we were together when we were travelling through the Far East on the second series that we did together, which was because that one we weren't driving. I don't know why, but that was a directorial decision, was that we wouldn't drive. Yeah. So we spent most of the time sitting in the back of a van. So there was a lot of reading going on or watching. So he binge watched Game of Thrones on that. So I had a great power over him then, because I had also read the books and watched the show. And so if he was ever annoying me, I would just threaten to spoil the next episode,
It's a similar thing to what you have with me currently with the chase.
The chase, yes. I could absolutely destroy your enjoyment of the chase.
You could.
If you cross me!
I'm going to have to try not to.
Don't cross me.
Now, are you up to date on Game of Thrones? Have you seen the latest episode?
It's in the latest episode, the one that went out at 2 o'clock this morning?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that one.
I've seen it.
Okay, good for you. Don't.
Very tired. The balance is restored.
She has power. Because this is the battle of
Battle of Winterfell.
Yeah. I nearly said Helm's Deep, which is an entirely different franchise.
Night King's out of control. He's just made everything a bit chilly.
Yeah. Okay. Don't. Okay. Shh.
In Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be fine. I won't tell you much about it. Now, tell us a fun fact about you that we do not know, that's never come up before. Could be a piece of trivia, a party trick that you've got.
I'm sure there must be something. But I often get asked if I have any hidden talents.
Yeah.
And I don't. What meager talent I have is permanently on display. I never, if there was anything about me, I would, if I could play the guitar, it would be incorporated into my act at some point. I would absolutely have broken it out on stage. I would never keep secret any skill that I had. But no, I don't really have anything other than I'm learning carpentry.
Are you really?
That's a fact, I guess, sort of. I don't know if this is the first time it's been revealed on camera, but I'm trying.
Certainly on this show.
I'm trying to. A chopping board will be the first thing I will make. I'm trying to make things out of found wood. Oh, wow. So I'm not buying the wood, using the wood from a tree that's come down. But it's a very slow process, because if the tree was alive, then you got to wait for it to dry out and stuff. But you got to dry it at the right temperature, because otherwise it cracks. Yeah. So there's that. So I finally got some wood, which I think is seasoned enough that I can start making stuff out of it.
That's exciting. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to do.
The ultimate goal is a canoe. Yeah.
Would be good, and you have to get that right so it doesn't sink.
Exactly. Nick Offerman is going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe this year, and he's a big woodworker, and he makes canoes. He's actually in a book that I have on making canoes. There's a chapter about him in it, or like a testimonial from him for the people who wrote the book. Yeah. So I wouldn't mind chatting to him if I run into. But he's only in Edinburgh for one night, so quite possibly not.
It's worth it. Yeah, I think. Now, this is just a plug. This is a sentence, an observation to tell people the 4 of your shows are currently on Next Up Comedy, which is very exciting to watch. Yeah, available to stream.
Right, that would be.
So there's Different Class, Crowd Pleaser, Roaring Forties, and Outside Looking In.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
You got a favourite of those?
I think Different Class is pretty good. Yeah, that was the one that sort of put me back on the map, as it were. But Outside Looking In has a really sweet ending. You know, it's I've got a fairly heartfelt ending about my elder son and a tale of him wanting pink shoes, and me being more than happy for him to have pink shoes, and where that led us.
It's fantastic.
Sorry, are you imagining, or have you seen it? Sorry.
So, yeah.
Oh no, thank you.
I've seen all of them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's quite a nice tale.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. So everyone should go and watch all of those, and all of your other things too.
Yeah, well, the last one then, what was it called? Spoiler alert, the BBC Scotland are going to show that.
Are they?
Yes. So I did a sort of a special Scottishy version of it, where I recorded it in Glasgow and threw in a bit more local, just enough to up the Scottish content so the BBC Scotland would buy it. So that's I don't know when that's going to be on, but that, you know, once it's on BBC Scotland, you can just watch it on the iPlayer then.
Fantastic. You're taking Spoiler Alert to New Zealand next month.
I am. I'm off there in a couple of weeks, and then that will be that it put to bed. And right now I'm working on the next one, which is called If I'm Honest.
Now that's coming to Edinburgh Fringe in August and going on tour from September, I believe. Yeah. Where will you be performing at Edinburgh Fringe, if you've got a venue, and what's the show about?
I'll be at the assembly rooms, the old assembly rooms. What used to just be the assembly rooms is now referred to as the assembly on George Street, I think, as opposed to George Square. It's just looking for people to go to the wrong place. But yeah, the music hall, which is where I played back in '99. Okay. So it's nice to go back there. It's been refurbed since then. So I'll be there every night. And then I'll be taking on. And the show, a lot of the show is about examining myself and deciding what it is about me I want to pass on to my children.
Fantastic. Very exciting. Now we've got a bit of a competition coming up, so you very kindly signed a couple of these lovely photos.
These photographs which by The photographer was Idil Sukhan. Did these? As she does a lot of. She's become quite the go-to for a lot of comics nowadays. Although she's retiring now, so a load of comics have flooded to her now to get in under the wire before she hangs up her still camera to take up filmmaking full time. Anyway, that's the picture.
And so, for a chance to win, all you need to do is subscribe, and in the comments below, just tell me what the name of Ed's new show is called.
You can just rewind, and then they'll know.
Yeah, so well, that's the point.
We're not going to do a proper question. It's just.
Should we make it?
We don't have to.
Do you think?
Let's not.
Should we not?
Right. Yeah.
So they know what your show's called.
Yeah. Just do that.
So it's very exciting. So that's all you need to do. Subscribe, leave a comment below, tell me what the name of Ed Byrne's new show is, touring in 2019 and mid-2020, I believe.
Oh, yeah, we could well go into right until the end of 2020. I think I've got a feeling this one's going to run and run.
I very much look forward to watching it.
I very much look forward to finishing it.
And can you tell me what else you've got planned for the rest of the year? Any more TV work coming up or anything like that? Musical?
No, I did a documentary about cosplayers for BBC One. It's just a one-episode thing as part of the Our Lives strand. So I'm doing the voiceover for that in a week or so. So that will hit our screen sometime in May. And then other than that, Mock the Week is coming back, and I'll be doing that.
Love that show.
For 5 or 6 episodes. 6 episodes, I think, yeah.
Have you been on that show that you've been the contestant on the most? Is that correct?
Apart from Hugh, I think I am now. I've been on it more times than anyone who's not a regular. Yeah. But I think the number of shows I've done now I think I've done it like as many as Frankie did. Because I think Frankie it was actually the show's been on from. He's done less than half the episodes now. The show's been on that long, and I've done roughly half the episodes. So.
That's amazing. It's still so much fun. Do you have any idea what the topics are going to be in advance, or do you kind of go in fresh? What happens?
No, there's a fair amount of pre-prep. You're given a bit of a heads up on what we're going to be talking about. Yeah, I mean sometimes it's just easy to guess anyway. Yeah. Certain subjects will never go away. It's not like if I think of a decent Brexit joke now, I'm not going to get the opportunity to crowbar it in, or a decent Trump joke, or anything else that just keeps on rolling, So, yeah, as long as the news doesn't change. And sometimes a subject will come up, and for whatever reason, it won't make it in, and then we'll just try it again the following week. Yeah. And so then you've already got some jokes in the chamber.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because it's a fantastic show, and you can still go back and watch old episodes. They're still super funny.
Yeah, that's why it's funny. It's even people who work in TV will sometimes say to me, "So do you record like 3 or 4 of those in a week?" And I'm like, "No, it's about the week's events. So we record 1 a week." And they're like, "And I'm talking TV producers," and they'll go, "Oh yeah, of course." But I think that's because most people who watch it, they watch it on repeat anyway, and they're used to it not actually corresponding with current events.
Otherwise, you'd have like Mock the Tuesday, Mock the Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, precisely.
Now, finally, have you got any messages for people watching the Sarah O'Connell Show and your fans around the world?
Oh, well, if I have fans, thank you for being such a thing.
Absolutely. Now, Ed Byrne, thank you so much for your time and coming on the Sarah O'Connell Show today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been lovely. I've enjoyed it immensely.
It's very good news. And thank you to everybody watching at home. Be sure to share, subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, leave lots of lovely comments, and be sure to enter the competition too. And I'll see you all again soon for another episode of the Sarah O'Connell Show. Bye.